Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you listening. Hope wherever you are in this world that this finds you well. Hope it finds you safe inside, or if it finds you outside, hope you're wearing a mask, maintaining social distancing, and taking care of those around you. That is going to be my refrain for the foreseeable future as the news and social media continues to remind me that not everybody is as cool and empathetic to their fellow humans as the people who listen to this show. But I appreciate you guys being here as I put out my little digital. I throw my digital notes in a bottle from the desert island of quarantine here, reaching out to those that I admire, those that I haven't seen in a while, and to those that I share some camaraderie. So this is in the spirit of what I'm talking about here. This is a reconnecting to someone important from my beginnings as a stand-up comedian. My guest on the show today is comedian Violet Gray. You might have seen Violet on Night Train with Wyatt Cenac, the TV version. I met Violet when I was first starting comedy in Baltimore, and as you may have heard in some of my recent episodes, as I've been able to feature my friends and some of my contemporaries from the Baltimore comedy scene, I met Violet very early on in my journey as a stand-up comedian at Damon's Bar and Grill at the Drink to We're Funny show, which was hosted by recent guest T. Brett Hudson. And not only did I find Violet incredibly funny immediately, but we understood each other's cultural references, had a lot of the same shared interests in pop culture and music, particularly with nerdcore hip hop, which, if you've heard my interviews with Schaefer the Dark Lord and MC Lars, is very important musically to me. And this was just, and we had not talked in a very long time, and it was great to be able to touch base and have like a what's the best way I can phrase that is a discussion about comedy from both a fan perspective as well as two people who are in the business, and I use air quotes when I say that. If anything, I feel like I'm very much on the fringes of show business here, but Violet is doing spectacularly, and we get a little bit into the process of doing the Night Train show with Wyatt Cenac, as well as early comedic influences. This is a very enjoyable episode, and I hope you guys get some joy from me and Violet discussing things that we very much love. So, as well as a city, Baltimore, which in the greater national conscience does not get is viewed, I would feel, very one-dimensionally. You know, if you've seen The Wire, of course, you have your perception of Baltimore. And I was recently listening to the audiobook version of Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain, who did not write favorably of the city of Baltimore, being that it was a kind of a low period in his cooking career at the time. But for those that are from Baltimore and have spent some time there, you'll know it's a very uniquely bizarre, quirky city with a lot of different aspects to it, and when we discuss that a bit as well. So I think you guys, I think you guys are going to enjoy this, and I appreciate that you're here. If you enjoy this and think you have a friend who might as well, we are available wherever you get your podcasts. And I would most certainly appreciate it, because you guys are my greatest ambassadors. If you like my show, then I know you know the cool people who will like it as well. So thank you guys for being here. And let's go to my chat with comedian Violet Gray.
And I do that room, Butterboy, Apartment on Charlie's Room. I'm just like, I look at the lineup and I'm like, what am I doing here? Okay.
Right, because you're like, these people have like a lot of TV credits. I feel like I stick out.
Yeah, I'm like, I am literally the only one on this lineup without a Wikipedia page.
Right. I've been in situations like that before, and I just kind of like I it's always very it's always like very exciting to me because even if and now that I'm like 10 years up here in New York City, if my destiny is to be like beside like the comedic greats of this time, that I think is still pretty cool. Um,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
but I could say I imagine why you're on there, and it's because you're really funny, Violet. Because I remember, I feel like maybe I met you maybe my second or third time doing stand up in Baltimore, and
Hmm.
immediately you were like one of my like I always thought like, oh my gosh, uh, new best friend, new favorite new another favorite comedian.
Where was that, by the way? Where was it that we were always seeing each other?
If I had to guess, I'd probably say Damon's, right?
Yes, that's where it was. It was me and you and Tommy and Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I do a Dungeons and Dragons podcast with them now.
Yes, Laugh Finder, right? Tommy was telling me
Yeah,
about that. That's
yeah.
that's gotta that's gotta be fun. I find like any kind of like game, any sort of like game, if you do it with a bunch of comedians, with maybe a couple of exceptions, is instantly more fun. Like I've done several like Quiplash live shows up here in New York, and they're always like the most fun.
Oh yeah. The crew, we do Quiplash with a guest every Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
And some of their newer games. Like there's a game like Quiplash where you have to draw the funniest T-shirt, and the T-shirt that wins, you can buy it for real.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I T-shirt KO. I know that one.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember seeing you at Damon's because as soon as and I was telling T Bread about this recently. As soon as I had that first good set, like the first time I went to Damon's, and I got hooked on stand up immediately. So I was there like every week. Also because that was the only place in Baltimore at the time you could get regular stage time.
Right, right. Yeah, like I remember when Tommy first started doing comedy. I've been doing it a little bit longer than him,
Mm-hmm.
but he had a decent set, and he was like, "Would you say I killed?" And I was like, "No, you 2 years from now is gonna blow this away."
Yeah.
And and yeah, that is our lot as comics to chase the laugh dragon.
Oh, 100%. I really have a lot of fond memories of that time when I discovered stand up because like that was the first time I had like a crew ever. I think
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
I had
Mm-hmm.
friends in high school, but I never felt like a crew. And I think like the and when I think of the comics that I in Baltimore that I did shows with starting out regularly, that were part of that. It was you, it was me, you, Tommy, Brian Preston, Jay Zek frequently. So I thought
Yeah.
yeah, so I
Uh-huh.
thought we were covering like we had a good all we were covering a lot of different comedic styles. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, my style was very understated, chaotic. Tommy's high energy. Jay Zek was sort of like the grumpy misanthrope.
Yeah, yeah. And Brian was just kind of sort of bringing the was would also bring that kind of sort of like slightly chaotic nerd energy. I feel like we kind of stood out because when I started, I was very like very understated as well, and I was like determined not to curse because I saw lots of like the headliners at the time doing lots of crowd work and cursing, so I was trying to be anything but that. But I always dug you because I feel like we understood each other's references the
Oh
best.
yeah, and and I also understood your commitment to that style.
Yeah.
I think I've always thought that it's okay for humor to be vulgar, but vulgar humor is easier. And if you can make a joke funny without the vulgarity, then there's more of a payoff. in terms of the laugh.
Yeah, I
Like
would
I don't,
definitely agree.
yeah, I don't like. I have nothing against cursing or something, but I just never really did it a lot because I wanted the complex laugh.
Yeah, I remember being like very into like joke writers when I started, and really wanting
Yeah.
and just really wanting to get the laugh based on the the craftsmanship of the joke, or the swerve in the joke. Like I was just kind of very like dedicated to that, and I always felt like, and I don't, and this might not be the best business to the best way to approach like stand up as a business, but I've always like, even when I was like bombing, or like people were just not getting me, or if it's like Sunday and the Ravens game is on, I was gonna not try to appease whoever I was in front of. I was just kind of gonna do whatever I wanted to do, and then if I bombed, then at least I bombed being me, I guess.
Well, I think there is, I definitely think that there is value to that because even if that happens, you're still learning.
Yeah.
And and eventually I think you learn to present yourself in a way that the audience will enjoy without having to compromise so much. So like I was reading the biography of Sam Kinison,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that he believed that the best comedians are the ones that can strip themselves bare before the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Not do what they think the audience will like, but be themselves in a funny way.
Absolutely. Like that's kind of the mystery of the whole art form. I think is to get to that. Like when people talk about like finding your voice, that is what that is how can you present the most authentic but hilarious version of yourself when you're on stage with the microphone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have you ever seen that guy, Liberal Redneck?
Oh, Trey Crowder. Yes, I know. I know Drew Morgan, who they're buddies.
Yeah, well, he was asked if liberal redneck is a character, and he basically said, "Well, it's me cranked up to 11."
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. There's sort of a there's still the show part of it, but I wanted to ask you, when you talk about like how you presented yourself on stage, when you're starting out to where you're at now, what do you think were your biggest learning curves as far as far as learning how to be on stage?
yeah. So to give you an example of how introverted I was when I started, when I graduated school, I
Mm-hmm.
was voted most quiet.
Uh huh.
And that came as a total shock to me. Like, I thought that I was being extremely sociable, but by the rest of the world's standards, I just wasn't saying anything to anybody. So I think that a lot of it was just being comfortable with myself.
Uh huh.
And I think going up as much as possible, that's what you have to do, because I had fears of being on stage and fear of being in front of people. And it's like immersion therapy. I just had to do it to get over that. And I mean, I don't think it ever completely went away. I mean, I still get nervous, but I think after a while, you keep writing and you have your favorite jokes, the jokes that you know that you're confident will work with an audience,
Mm-hmm.
that helps a great deal. So I would say that keep on writing and keep on working on those jokes is goes a long way toward helping you feel comfortable on stage, because then you know that you have something that they'll like, or at least you're confident. So I would say Just writing is the answer. Writing and practice, basically.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. I think that gives you the foundation with which you can go up there and then uh, improve upon everything else as far as the being able to like respond to stuff that happens in the crowd or or the ebbs and flows of that particular audience. If you have the strong foundation in writing and in the jokes, if you have like the act basically, that's why I was never good at like writing on stage or going up and like winging it and seeing what'll come up because it just was never that good. I didn't have the improv background like Tommy or some of our other friends did.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So to your point, talk about um, talking about being prepared for things that might go awry on stage.
Uh huh.
I think the lack of preparedness, the lack of the ability to adapt,
Mm-hmm.
I think that is exactly what happened to Michael Richards. Do you remember?
Yeah, yeah. When he freaked out at the Laugh Factory and started screaming the N word. Yeah.
Yes, that happened because he was unprepared. I think a more seasoned comic, especially someone like what is his name? Legendary comic who looks like Booger from Revenge of the Nerds.
Booker from the Revenge of the Nerds. I'm not sure. I'm gonna look this up while you tell me this story.
Well, he is Doug Stanhope.
Yes, I know Doug
Yeah,
Stanhope.
yeah. So I am. If you imagine Doug Stanhope in that exact same situation, it would not have gone that way. I think when you're an inexperienced comic, um, comedy is like balance, and a more experienced comic can roll with the punches and maintain balance, and a less experienced comic will fall off the tightrope completely and crash into the china cabinet below the tightrope.
Sure, sure.
But that's what happened to Michael Richards. He didn't have enough balance to deal with the change that came his way, which was someone, I don't know, shouting or whatever, and he completely collapsed. Uh, so so yeah, I think that comes with experience because if it had been a more experienced, like a veteran comic, like a Doug Stanhope or a Dave Chappelle had a racist guy throw a banana at him on stage.
Oh, really?
And
I don't know this story.
yeah, there's video of it. And the guy threw the banana, and Dave was in the middle of the joke. And and he sort of paused. Now keep it. Now you remember what Michael Richards did, where he like freaked out and started calling people the N word.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle just kind of looked down at the floor and said, "Hey, who threw a banana up here?" you know,
Uh huh.
yeah. There's a reason you didn't hear about it because he didn't flip out when it happened.
Sure.
Um, I mean, he still kind of roasted the guy, but by then he was prepared.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, and the thing I love about him, I remember seeing a clip of Dave on Inside the Actor Studio, and him talking about getting booed at the Apollo when he was like just starting out, and him talking to James Lipton and saying, this isn't that. I remember feeling this isn't that bad, and like when he was before the most recent Netflix specials, when he was like on that what was that big comedy tour like Oddball or something like that.
Right, right.
He would just like there were shows that he would just completely stop the show and start texting, and an entire arena is booing him, and he does not care whatsoever. I the amount of grace, the amount of grace under pressure that requires is is admirable. But it goes exactly to your point when it comes to being prepared. So then, yeah, you might if you don't have a firm founding in the basement, if you get when you get shook, you're
Right,
gonna fall apart. And in this day and age, there's gonna be someone there to film it.
right. Like one of the most. So I don't know if you remember a. I don't know if you remember a local sort of veteran comedian here named Timmy Hall.
I remember that name.
Yeah, he was an active Baltimore City cop when he was doing comedy.
Yeah.
Hilarious. He is one of the people that I look up to here, and he said that what he saw, um, what is his name? Red-haired comic
Carrot
Bill
Top.
Burr.
Bill Burr. Yeah.
What he saw Bill Burr do in Philadelphia was one of the most professional things he had ever seen. Do you remember that?
I do. Bill Burr told Philadelphia to go fuck themselves for his entire set, and crushed by just insulting the audience in increasingly graphic detail. Didn't I don't he probably cursed, but he didn't like use slurs or anything like that. He just got incredibly personal, which is what something I think I've taken up to. I try to the couple when I get heckled, I like to be like very specific, as be like, your parents failed you. You are the
Yes.
result of failure. like just get like really specific. It's gonna get me punched in the face eventually, but it's
Hey,
entertaining for me.
that's comedy.
Yeah, that'll be the well. I don't know if you ever saw this, but like, and I told Steve Hofstetter this. The underlying goal of my whole career right now is to do something that gets more views than the video of me almost getting punched in the face by one of Rich Voss's hecklers when I was a doorman at the Laughing Devil.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
That
I remember
I don't know if you
a
saw that.
no. Oh my gosh. You almost got punched being the door guy.
Yeah, it was like man, it must have been like 2012 or 2013. It was a long time ago. And there was this old guy who was completely shit faced, and he would not shut the fuck up. And it wasn't like the kind of fun heckling. It was the kind of like drag the show to a grinding halt. And he tried to start a fight with like three Jersey bros with like the pastel like alligator shirts, and I put my shoulders on to pull him away from a confrontation. He turned around, he grabbed my shirt, and he pushed me. And I'm just standing there, and I'm like, I'm thinking he's got to hit me first before I can hit him. Someone will probably stop this. And then Steve Hofstadter came in and got in between us. It was that was kind of a that was sort of like one of my first moments of like I don't know if I can keep doing this job.
Right,
I still
right.
love comedy, but if I'm gonna get accosted by hecklers, I would like to be the performer, you know.
Right, right. I
Um,
remember a comedy buddy of mine. Her name is Christy Bellick.
mm-hmm.
She said something that someone in the audience didn't like. So she leans kind of liberal, and she was in a very rural crowd, right? And
Yeah.
she said something that some woman didn't like, and the woman threw her drink in her face,
Oh
and
my.
she was like, "Well, I still have 3 minutes, so I might as well finish my time."
Uh huh. It's like you're not gonna fuck with me. It's like
Right. Talk about building up armor. Jeez.
I love that. Um, I kind of wanted to trace this a little bit. Can you tell me? Do you remember like the first moment you remember being like exposed to stand up comedy? Like not even comedy in general, but specifically stand up.
So, do you mean other than TV?
Let's do both. Let's start with TV. Because I want to trace this. And are you originally from Baltimore? I don't know if I ever asked you
Yes.
that. Okay, so you're from
Born and
Baltimore.
raised. Yes. So, I think the first time I had ever been exposed to stand up is like this was back when like Johnny Carson or whatever reruns were still on.
Uh huh.
I would see late night talk shows, and they would always have a comedian come on, and I thought that was pretty funny. I was a big fan of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I used to watch back in the day. They don't do this anymore. They used to have half-hour TV shows that were comedy shows, just one comic after another,
Mm-hmm.
and you would see people like Amazing Jonathan. Remember him?
I sure do.
Yeah, Amazing Jonathan and Bill Wallace, the guy who was like, bus drivers always want exact change. I think if I give them exact change, they should take me exactly where I want to go. But
Right.
but yeah, I would watch that. So I was a fan of the stand up I saw on TV since I was in the single digits of age.
Oh, so it goes that far back. Okay.
Yeah. And my first in person stand up was one day when I was in college. And this was when the internet was in its infancy.
Mm-hmm.
So hardly anything was online yet.
Yeah.
I looked up a comedy night in the paper,
Right on.
and there was an open mic comedy night at this place called Courtney's. And I went there and I was terrified because that's actually where, and I didn't notice at the time, there were other places, but they didn't have ads in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And Courtney's had a reputation for being a rough room, and that's where I started.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know that audiences could be nice. And toward the end of me going to Courtney's place, I was like, maybe because I've been dabbling in acting a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm getting no love here. Maybe I'll just go to acting for a while and work on a good set, and maybe I'll come back. And then I went to Winchester's, which is where the Comedy Factory used to be downtown.
Yes, I've heard many a tale of Winchesters.
Yeah, and I went there and I had my first, I would say, good set,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "Where did you come from?" Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, I've mostly done Courtney's," and they were like, "Oh, we don't go there," and I was like, "Oh, well." But yeah, I had to look up in the paper and go to a comedy show for my first.
Oh, that's hilarious. And was Courtney's like a bunch of the crowd trying to replicate like Showtime at the Apollo, or was it more like a biker bar?
It was kind of like Def Comedy Jam,
Oh, okay.
and as I'm sure you can tell, they just loved my nerd jokes so much.
Of course.
Yeah, who here
Exactly.
plays Dungeons and Dragons? That not a big D&D crowd. Um,
I could imagine not. I've done those kinds of shows, and I've gracefully taken the L and then gotten off stage.
yeah, hey, it's part of doing comedy.
It 100% is because when I the couple times when I do well, where it does go well, it's amazing. But it is a part of being a comedian 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I remember the Comedy Factory used to do this night that they called Def Comedy Slam,
Uh-huh.
and the host, thank you so much. He would go up in front of this audience and he would say, "Your headliner is from Def Jam, Def Comedy Jam, or like Comedy Central, or Comic View, or HBO or something." He said, "But first, we have these open micers, and if you don't like them, you can just boo them off the stage."
Oh, super supportive. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah. It's like give the audience a hammer and have them looking for a nail, you know?
Oh yeah, totally. There's a show in New York called a Pain or Paid, where the audience determines if the after the comic set if they did well enough to get money or if they should be hit by dominatrix. And even if the comic has a great set, if I was in that audience, I'd be voting pain every single time
Right.
because I want to get my entertainment dollar. You know.
Right, right. Yeah, I would say there's a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, it's just it's fascinating to me that stand up is one of those art forms specifically where sometimes the organizers and sometimes the crowd really is trying to replicate the Roman gladiator experience.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, some audiences can there can be a sort of bloodthirsty element. Um I was talking on another podcast about the most brutal thing I've seen at a show,
Mm-hmm.
and it was there was this one guy that I saw go up that was heckled until he burst into tears. And then, as he literally ran off stage and out of the club, the audience laughed at him. Like, that's how he killed.
Oh man.
Like, they were literally enjoying his pain.
Oh
And
my
it was
gosh.
just like, and then it was time for the next comic. And I was like, oh great.
Yeah, that's kind of a hard act to follow. That's like that's like I remember my the first time I moved up in when I first moved up to New York, I went and saw Eugene Merman's old show. I can't remember what it was called, but it was at the Bell House. And for some reason, uh, either the lead singer or a member of the alternative rock group, the Butthole Surfers, was doing a set, and he is not a comedian, and so he started doing this riff where he kept using, he I don't want to say the word. It was like not the hard R, but it was like it was definitely not something that he should have been repeating. And this woman in the crowd, first off, she like gets very vocal and upset, and then she rushes the stage and tries to take the microphone from him. And then there's like a confrontation, and then Eugene Merman comes out, uh, separates everybody. He gets off stage after shooting off one of those like firecrackers, like
Mm-hmm.
one of those streamer things. And then Eugene's just sitting there, and the room is so uncomfortable. And then he just goes, "So I was at the mall the other day. There,
Per-
there's so many ATMs at the mall."
that's perfect.
Yeah, it was just like I mean it worked perfectly. And then Todd Barry closed out, and he kept every time his tag for every joke he did was, "Please don't rush the stage." So if Winchester's was still around, is this like early 2000, early mid 2000s? Because I started in 2007, and I think it was gone by then.
Oh, it was definitely gone by then. Let's see. What year did 9/11 happen? Do you remember?
9/11 happened in 2001.
In 2001?
Yeah.
Okay, so I remember being there like the week after it happened, and I think it lasted 2 years after that. So it was
Mm-hmm.
I would place it around 2003 or so.
2003. Okay, so so this is when like and this is like when you decide, okay, I'm gonna be a comedian.
Yeah, I should have gotten the hint when I was in Towson for molecular biology, and people kept asking me which theater program I was in.
Uh huh.
And so there were elements of it for me that were always there. Um, I thought I would be more of an actor, but
Mm-hmm.
comedy is where I ended up because I loved the wit aspect of it.
Absolutely. That makes total sense to me as a Towson theater grad who ended up in comedy. I relate to that 100%. My favorite times on stage were when I could get a laugh, even like doing plays. It's always the
Right,
most
right, of course.
yeah. That was always the most fun part. I remember the first big laugh I got in high school. I was in the pajama game, and there's a scene I play like the bad guy boss, and there's a scene where a knife gets thrown into the wall, and then I jumped. I like ran and jumped across the stage to hide behind my desk, and that got a huge laugh. And then this is of course indicate an indicator of the where I'm from, but there's a line that said, "Don't you see those knives? That's a work of foreigners," and that always got like a huge pop, and I would crouch behind the desk and be like, "Oh, that was so excited. Maybe I could get it saying something slightly more of the year that I live in."
Yeah. Hmm.
um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So you start doing comedy and around that time. You're going to Winchester's, and and what else, who else is around during this time? I'm very curious of the history of
Okay.
Baltimore comedy.
So when I started at Courtney's place, the
Mm-hmm.
host was Stacy Carver, someone who would eventually be on Comic View,
Mm-hmm.
and another comic was his co-host, who would end up in that basketball Will Ferrell movie.
Oh yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Is that Jay or someone? But yeah, so that's who was there. When I started going to Winchester's a few years later, it was me, Larry XL,
Mm-hmm.
Jared Stern,
Oh yeah,
Eric,
Jared.
yeah, Eric Myers,
Mm-hmm.
um, and let's see, Adam Rubin. There was a guy named Mike DeStefano, but he passed away now.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Mike was in Mike started in Baltimore. I remember him. He has this great story about riding on a motorcycle with his wife right before she died.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
he was there. He was hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was really funny.
He was like, "I'm tired of black people getting the credit for the drive-by shooting. I'm Sicilian. We invented that."
Oh, that's fucking great. I love that.
But Aaron Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
who's like big time now.
Oh yeah, she was great. I she was always so nice and so hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, she's awesome. But yeah, uh, it's something that more people from Baltimore would probably know. I mean, a lot of the other comics went
Mm-hmm.
on to do
Yeah,
great
and
things.
then and I guess he was more DC, but like Seton Smith comes out of this
Oh yeah,
time as well.
Seton Smith, Aparna later, Aparna Nancherla.
Mhm. Yeah, I Aparna is one of my favorite comedians. I always uh, was happy when I got to be on shows with her in Baltimore. Um, I'm curious. Do you think that Baltimore has like a specific Baltimore comedy has like a specific style and characteristics the way people talk about New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco?
Well, if I were to give a specific style to Baltimore, I would say that it stems from the perception of Baltimore itself. So, Baltimore has a certain reputation
Right.
in the rest of the country, and the people who live in Baltimore are hyper aware of that.
Yeah.
And I think that it gets reflected a lot in Baltimore comedy. Uh, I would say, if I would say that there was a distinct style, I would say that from a writing perspective, the comedians from Baltimore know where they're from.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
yeah, and they make their observations. I mean, I still do that. Like when I was on Night Train with Wyatt Cenac,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was still making Baltimore references because I know that by now everyone, Baltimore was in the public consciousness. Like the first time I was supposed to open for Wyatt Cenac, it didn't end up happening because it was the weekend that the riots took place.
Uh huh.
And so, yeah, I mean, I would classify. Also, I would say Baltimore style is kind of self-deprecating,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just a tad bit cynical. Not a lot, but just a tad bit.
Yeah, I could see that. If part of me, I'm agreeing with your assessment because I feel like the rest of the country that doesn't think about The Wire immediately when they think about Baltimore, they think about like no one brings up Hairspray. Everyone's like, oh, Baltimore, that's that like weird like city, but like it's not. I don't really view it as like a city. It's just this kind of weird place in Maryland where there's a lot of crime. And
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know it's in Maryland. Baltimore is like this weird archetype to them.
yeah, no, totally, and especially because if you're doing like if you're in like and the inner if you're doing like anything show business related in Baltimore, I've talked to lots of like bands and musicians from the area as well that I was big fans of, but there's there's like not really this idea that you're gonna that there's industry is like the show business is ever going to see you. Like maybe there's these rumors or of somebody coming down to attend a show, but you're really just kind of doing it for you and the people that are there. There's no real like uh industry presence, which I think is kind of freeing. It was for me at least when I was starting.
Yeah, absolutely. Comedy is not as enjoyable when there's pressure.
Yeah,
It's one of the
I agree.
reasons I hated doing contests so much,
Mhm.
is because I swear it is if it is much more stressful to think that you have a shot at winning than to not think you have a shot at winning.
Oh, totally. I remember. Were you there with like me, Tommy, and a bunch of other comics when we went and like slept out on the street in front of the Comedy Factory to do NBC Stand Up for Diversity?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I was so I remember being so tired for that for that like first 3 minutes, and I was and that was the fun one. It was the second one. It was the second one that's got stressful. Now I kind of feel like why was I at Stand Up for Diversity? But at that time, you just any opportunity you can see, you know, because when is this ever going to happen again?
Right, right. One of our locals just won that whole thing
Oh,
for
really?
last year. Frankie French.
Oh, I don't know him, but
Yeah,
awesome.
she
That's
just won for this year,
oh,
and
geez, sorry.
yeah, yeah, it's spelled differently.
Gotcha.
Um, but yeah, she's really funny, and keep an eye out for that name, Frankie French, because she's already, as a result of that, doing a bunch of shows up in New York, and it's really only a matter of time.
Well, excellent. Yes, I'm gonna keep an eye out for that name. Maybe I should try to get her on before she blows up. That's kind of my thing. Right on. And so okay, so you're doing sets around Baltimore for a while. I'm curious because I remember being very excited when I saw that you got Night Train. So I'm curious how that came about.
Oh, so Wyatt Cenac was going to do was planning to do a show at the Auto Bar,
Mm-hmm.
and his agent or whatever uh, hit them up for local comedians because they wanted a local comedian to open up
Mm-hmm.
for Wyatt Cenac, and whoever is his representation is the same representation of what is her name? She had something on. She had a short-lived show on Starz. She's an openly gay female comic. Do
Mm.
you know who I'm talking about? I think she's up in New York.
Sounds familiar, but I'm not 100.
Carmen Esposito? Cameron Esposito?
Cameron Esposito. Oh,
Yeah.
the woman with the kind of like swoopy mullety haircut.
Yes.
Yeah, Cameron Esposito. She and Rhea Butcher had that show on CISO, I think.
Yes. Yes. And so I think they have the same representation. And
Mm-hmm.
so they were looking for someone who could open up for Cameron Esposito. And they saw a tape of me because I was submitted by someone. I still don't know who to this day suggested me to them. But after they saw my tape, their representation or whatever was like, yeah, I think this person should open up for Wyatt Cenac. And so when Wyatt Cenac came to the Auto Bar, which for your listeners is a venue with comedy but mostly music in Baltimore City.
It's a great venue.
Yeah, it's good. It was me, then Natalie McGill, and then Wyatt Cenac, and it ended up being a good show. And then when Wyatt Cenac was hosting Night Train, he had me come up for a non-taped show. It was just a show
Mm-hmm.
that Night Train was doing, and then after that, he asked me back for the taped show that started on CISO but ended up on Starz.
Yeah, I remember that because there was kind of when CISO started fading away, all the programming kind of migrated.
Right, right.
And how's your experience recording that show?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. It felt like the movie Pretty Woman,
Uh huh. Yeah.
where you get lifted up out of your situation. And like they put me up in a hotel, they paid for my commute, uh, they paid me more money than I'd ever made for a comedy show. And then suddenly I was in this place with like lights and makeup. And
Uh
I
huh.
was like, oh my God, I'm part of an actual show. And I'm on stage and there's a DJ and there's like a actual like movie style cameras everywhere. And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah, it was incredible. It was one of the best experiences of my comedy career, I think.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I that's and for me seeing that because the same way I remember telling I had Mitch Allen from SR71 on recently, who's one of my favorite bands. I remember telling him that it was a big deal. Like a band from Maryland was on the radio, and so I remember seeing like comics from Baltimore are on TV in New York City because like when we were starting, that was like at least for me that was like the goal get to New York. So
Right, right.
I was very excited to see that for you. And I guess from maybe I'm curious from more of a, a business side. What did that show did following that taping? What was the impact on your career?
Well, um, following that taping immediately, I think that is the well, for one thing, I think that is the single thing that got my foot in the door with other New York shows.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a comedy show in New York called Doctors Without Borders,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sorry, Doctors Without Boundaries. And it's hosted by two actual medical doctors, and it's a really fun show. Anderson Cooper was in the audience. I got to hang out with him briefly.
Oh, cool.
Um, and I think that came as a result. I did get a few people wanting me to audition for some things after they saw me
Mm-hmm.
on Night Train with Wyatt Cenac. I was a little perturbed. The only thing I didn't like was that they told me for the show, because of the cameras and everything, that I shouldn't wear all black. And I was like, what? That's my thing. Like,
Right. Right.
but other than that, yeah, I did get like more of a Twitter, more of a social media presence. Um, and uh, I did get a couple inquiries asking me to audition for some things, like whether it was like hosting a show that was going to be on the Travel Channel or stuff like that. It didn't pan out, but also I met other comics and was seen by other comics who wanted to include me in opportunities, and I was grateful for that as well. So, um, Marianne, who was the producer of the show, I was fortunate enough to have a really good set when I went up there, and so she definitely kept me in mind for future sets. And all of those times where I look at the comedians around me and I'm like, what am I doing here? Are
Yeah.
because of her directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just kind of brings it full circle. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that you were up for a travel show. I think you would be. I think that would be an excellent avenue for you both as a personality and as a comedian.
Oh yeah, I would totally do that. Oh, also, Marianne, she put me on the Butterboy Zoom show,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on there with Marina Franklin, which is how I got to do her podcast. That comes out this not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, I think.
Excellent. Well, by the time this is out, you can like send me a link so I'll link it there as well. Glad again I'm glad I'm getting you right before you blow up again, Violet. um,
Here's hoping.
yeah. Well, and also well, and just a quick sidebar, like the first moment that I felt I was getting somewhere with this podcast, uh, comes back to a conversation we had because I think you know that I enjoyed Nerdcore and MC Lars, and then you were like, "Oh, well, you got to listen to Schaefer the Dark Lord.
Yes.
Schaefer the Dark Lord is great." So I got really into Schaefer the Dark Lord because of you. And then when I was able to get Schaefer and MC Lars on the show, I those were the first times.
What?
Those were my first. Those were the first two guests where I was like, "Oh, holy shit! Maybe I should keep pushing the podcast thing."
What? That's awesome.
Yeah, they're both super nice people. Super nice people. Schaefer lives in Queens, where I live.
Oh
Super
wow.
great. Super cool people.
Yeah, Schaefer has some bars, man.
Oh my gosh. Let me tell you. And the crazy thing I learned talking to him was before, you know, he used to play in like metal and punk bands, but then going into when he was transitioning into being a rapper, he would go and do stand up at open mics as part of the honing of being on stage, transitioning into rap. And I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I could believe that.
Yeah.
I could easily see that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think like I don't know if Schaefer. I don't know if you've heard this new album he did with a guy named Vince Vandal called the Department of Darkness.
Oh yeah, I have that album.
That album is so good. Like the beats are so crazy. Like I'm trying to learn more about the musicality of hip hop as far as like what goes into having like what goes into creating a beat, what goes into what makes a rapper like
Good.
sound good, like as far as like
So,
learning what flow means and stuff.
so you've seen or heard of you have you heard the Hamilton soundtrack yet?
Oh yeah, I just watched it on Disney Plus last weekend. It's great.
Okay, so you know the song "My Shot."
Yep.
So there's an interview with Lin Manuel Miranda, and he said that for the song "My Shot," he created a deliberate contrast in the way they flow.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that before Hamilton, the character comes in, they're doing their very basic, what he calls pre Rakim hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, Rakim, before Rakim, most hip hop sounded sort of like a very basic Run DMC,
Yeah,
like
kind of like
just two couple. I'm John Lawrence and the place to be. 2 pints of Adams and I'm working on three. So very basic.
Right.
And then when Rakim came out with the song I Ain't No Joke, he just dropped this extremely complex rhyme scheme where there were rhymes in the beginning of the sentence, as in the middle, at the end. He would break a sentence in half and use it for two separate rhymes. And he said he deliberately had Hamilton come in and be the more complex spitter
Uh
to
huh.
to point that Hamilton is the future, you know. And so, oh, also I'm working on my own hip hop. So,
Nice.
but yeah, there it can be very complex. There's the rhyme schemes, there's the wit involved, and you're also an author. You're painting pictures with your mind, which in my uh, opinion is Eminem's greatest strength.
Just his ability to like paint a picture for the listener.
Yeah. So for example, Eminem has this song called "White America."
Yep, I know that song.
Yeah, it's like, whoever thought standing in the mirror, bleaching my hair with some peroxide, reaching for a t-shirt to wear. How many times have you seen a movie that opens with a guy like washing his hair, then he brings his hand up and looks at his face in the mirror and reaches for his t-shirt and gets dressed?
Mm-hmm. Tons
Yeah,
of them.
it's very cinematic uh, imagery that he was putting in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can send you links later about the intricacies of flow and stuff like that.
Oh, please do. I'm very interested in this. The equivalent, I guess, the equivalent to me, because I think Hamilton is starting to help white America realize the intricacies and mastery of the English language and public speaking skills that rappers possess. I guess the equivalent, if for me, would be like when you think of rock music, there is that sort of AB like when you were telling me about AB kind of rap. That's would be like a blues guitar scale, like simple guitar solo, and it's like tasteful, not overly complicated, but it makes you feel something. Whereas Rakim and like those rappers that can say like 6 syllables a second, or like the that one verse in the middle of Rap God where Eminem is just saying like I think like somewhere something like 10 syllables a second. That's like Yingui Malmsteen. Those are like neoclassical like guitar shredders. That's the rap equivalent
Right,
of
right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's very comparable with the levels of complexity. Um, and I would love to be able to do that with comedy as much as possible. Like have I wouldn't mind having jokes that like take a second, you know, because one thing I think audiences love when you make them feel smart,
Mm-hmm.
and they enjoy a joke more, I think, when they're proud of getting it.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is this balance between, you can make a joke that's sort of obscure or a deep cut, but not so much that they don't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
And for
Yeah.
me, that's my balance.
Oh yeah.
I want to tell jokes that they're proud to get.
Exactly. It goes right back to like again that through line of like of like when I first met you, and just the dedication to that style. And for me at least, it means that it takes longer for me to put together like a length of a set and to get new jokes. But I'm really happy when I get
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
those new jokes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um. So I'm curious because I don't know if we've ever talked in depth about like goals, because I don't know if I've ever gotten the impression that you aspired to be like a road dog kind of comedian like some of our peers, or am I completely off base with that?
Um, Not really. I've never really I've never really I mean, otherwise I have like an insatiable wanderlust, but I've never really uh, aspired to be like a like I'll travel for comedy,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think, especially now, that I would be willing to be a quote unquote road comic just because I hear all sorts of crazy stories and I'm like, I could get all that craziness here in Baltimore.
Sure, sure.
I don't need to spend gas money to get the craziness elsewhere, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of spoiled because I'm not that far away from New York and I'm not that far away from Philadelphia.
Yeah. So you're not too
If I had grown up right, if I had grown up in like the Midwest, I'd probably be a lot more likely to be a road comic.
sure because you can. I guess you can only do Chicago so much before you're like, all right, I gotta.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens in Milwaukee. That's I naturally came to this, but I think you're we're ahead of the game given the fact that the industry has effectively shut down with because of the pandemic.
Yeah, because no one. I was wondering which episode, which Black Mirror esque scenario would end up being true.
Sure.
And it's the one where we have to depend on technology now more than ever to make the basic, uh, most basic communications.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like there's no in person. Like the fact that there was I don't know if you saw, but on Twitter a few weeks ago, people started posting the placebo chant that from The Simpsons that ends up with Killer Bees being released. Like just the fact that The Simpsons called another thing. Like I'm rewatching it now because I'm trying to prepare for what's coming next. Um, uh, and I don't know about you. I've done one Zoom performance, but I'm gonna say I would do it if I'm asked, but I'm not in a super hurry to try to do like tons of outdoor shows or like socially distant shows. I know, granted, I have the luxury of not being able to do that, but uh, I'm content to just stay in this room and talk to people about stuff for the foreseeable future.
There we go. Uh, yeah, like I think the pandemic is has changed the world, and it is up to us to do what we can to roll with that punch.
Mm-hmm.
And one interesting thing I've seen as a result is we can do open mics all over the world now.
Yep, we sure can.
Yeah, Tommy was just telling me about how he stayed up to 3 a.m. to do an open mic in England,
Uh huh.
and that's cool. I mean, it's not as cool that we can't go anywhere and do anything, but I would love to do more of that because if civilizations should crawl back from the ruins, um, I would love to have some of the connections that I've made from doing Zoom shows uh, in who knows where.
Exactly. Um, I know exactly what you mean because as someone as someone who's been fortunate enough to do comedy in other countries, like those experiences to me are the most priceless. So yeah,
Oh,
100%. You're saying to me that you had this kind of wanderlust. Is there somewhere you would want to go? Not even comedy specific. Is there somewhere you would want to go? Uh, once the pandemic is over and our passports aren't worthless.
oh, I would love also. Um, there's a goth convention in England that I've been wanting to go to for the past couple
Nice.
decades,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the Whitby uh, Gothic convention. But also, I would love to be able to do comedy at that Edinburgh festival.
Yeah, me too. That's a goal.
Yeah, heck, I would be happy with doing comedy in Montreal at that Montreal Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Oh, just for laughs.
Yeah, just for laughs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Montreal's a very cool city. I really like it up there. I've never performed there, but I have spent some time up there. Um, there's this amazing poutine paste called, I think it's pronounced Le Bon Cassis, but
Hmm.
that I will stand in line for hours to get into that place because it is amazing. I've also I've and the I've talked about this a lot. I really want to get my I play in a I'm in a band right now, and I really want to get us big in Japan so that we can tour in Japan eventually. Because
Hmm.
that just seems fun as shit.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would also wouldn't mind going to Japan. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Because you're a I know you're a comic book person, so like there's a place there called the Mandrake Complex that is like 8 floors of anime and vintage video games and collectible statues.
Holy crap!
It is the greatest place I have. It is the greatest place I've ever been, and over there, like I'm used to paying like $14 for like a light novel or a manga or something like that. Over there, like $3,
Oh my
the
goodness!
equivalent of $3. Granted, I can't read kanji to save my life, but I like appreciating the artwork and trying to guess what's happening.
Right. I think that guy's cutting that guy, and that guy just insulted that guy's mother, maybe. But
Exactly. I do enjoy those classic anime tropes. Like, okay, there's one guy who looks very pissed off talking to another guy who looks very pissed off and is a little bloody, and they're saying some emphatic words because it's in bold. And okay, so I know in 5 pages they're going to be screaming at each other and having a sword fight.
yes, one guy is running. You know, one guy is about to attack the other guy because there are like all these lines going by him.
Mm-hmm.
The anime whoosh
Yeah,
lines.
yeah, exactly, the whoosh lines or the like high impact like clangs like sword fights in manga. I can barely. It's hard to follow if it's in black and white for me, but uh, it's still cool as shit. It's something an aesthetic that I enjoy.
Yeah. I would
Um,
definitely go to Japan. I would love to like shop in like the Harajuku area.
oh, I've been there a couple. I've been there a couple times. It is an experience. It is I was led to believe, and I was led to believe that because I am tall, that like schoolgirls would be running up to me, but that did not happen. Uh, in India, though, I because I started counting, I was a couple years ago. I went to India with my fiance, and I took pictures with like 45 different strangers who just wanted a
Oh,
picture with me because I'm tall. I think.
oh, really? So, did you get any reaction at all in Japan because of your height?
Um, yes. Not public because I think Japan is like a more reserved, polite society. But a 80-year-old woman on the subway, I caught her out the corner of my eye taking a picture of me because on this particular train there were like oscillating fans with like not much of a cover on them, and it was a couple inches from my head.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Is it because everything is just generally smaller there?
Yeah, I found most of the places I've gone overseas, places things were built when the average height of humans was not it was not as tall as me. So I have tons of pictures of me not fitting in anywhere in around the
Yeah,
world.
when I came up to New York for the first time, which was when I did the night train with Wyatt Cenac thing, um, I was like, a New York City block is like a Baltimore neighborhood in a corset.
Ouch.
It's just as much in a Baltimore City neighborhood condensed into a city block. Like,
Oh, 100%. I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my entire high school graduating class lives in my apartment building, like equivalent or thereof.
right, right. And I was like, wow, there's so much here. I can understand how people say that they would be overwhelmed, but I'm chaotic and have ADHD, so not so much for me.
Hmm.
But there's just so much city and so much in such a small per inch in New York.
Oh yeah, that's kind of why I like it. I've like, even after 10 years, I still just love being here. Like I love being surrounded by all this. Even in lockdown, I still just get such a rush out of like walking around in these streets. I'm like, yeah, this is. I feel like it's where I belong, and I'm very
Yeah.
glad to
Hmm.
still be here. You're saying you're making hip hop. Tell me about that.
So I so occasionally, um, back when we were allowed to go anywhere and do anything,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would do this thing where if I was driving back and I knew where I was going, as in I didn't need my GPS,
Yeah.
I would put an instrumental CD in and I would go on Facebook Live and I would have people feed me words and I would freestyle based on the words they gave me. Um, really, I had been rapping since before high school, but I haven't really I hadn't really done anything with it because I got super sidetracked with comedy.
Sure.
It was like my creative vortex. And now that I have my other equipment and stuff, I and time, I've started refocusing back, and it tends toward the nerdy, and it tends toward sort of a horrorcore sort of thing,
Uh huh.
and with a lot of geek references.
Yeah.
And I'm having a lot of fun with it. Production is hard,
Yep.
but yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it right now.
That is very very cool. And do you have a stage name, or are you going under Violet?
Um, just Violet Gray.
Awesome.
Uh, yeah,
Well,
yeah, and so I'm having fun writing. It's taking forever because
mm-hmm.
I'm also holding down a sane person job at the library.
Sure.
But
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
I know exactly what you mean. Well, if I figure out how to make a beat, I'll send something your way. I would be very excited to hear your stuff eventually. And
oh
and
yeah,
and this has been really nice. I feel like we haven't. You are one of the people, Violet, that is like very important. I think to my personal journey through comedy, and then leading to New York. So I am I'm glad that the pandemic has kind of afforded me the opportunity to reach out to you and uh the people I started with in Baltimore. So this has been really nice to get to talk to you again.
yeah. It's been a lot of fun, and this is one of those ways in which technology had been our saving grace. Because could you imagine the pandemic hit and we weren't able to communicate online like this?
Oh yeah, I
People,
think I think I would I would have I think I'd probably be like in the woods of New Jersey somewhere, like trying to catch squirrels to barbecue.
right?
Just gone completely rogue, so to
Yeah,
speak.
raccoon cap on.
Yeah, exactly. This is the end. Is there anything we can plug? Is there anything I can plug before we get out here?
Um, you People can follow me on Instagram as Chaotic Violet or Twitter as Violet Silver. I do have a YouTube page that has my set from Night Train on it, and I'm going to be putting more stuff on there soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, I look forward to hopefully getting to do shows together again in the after times, and look forward to hearing your hip hop. And thank you for talking to me, Violet.
Oh, thank you. This was great. So thank you for having me.
One of my oldest friends in comedy from the Baltimore scene, Violet Gray. Thank you so much for your time. It was great getting to catch up with you and upcoming hip hop from Violet. I'm looking forward to hearing that. Maybe that'll be my next quarantine project after I probably decide that learning Japanese is too hard. Maybe I'll start making hip hop beats. That'll be the new thing I'll do on here. But anyway, guys, that is the show for today. Thank you so much for listening. I sincerely appreciate it. And as I say every week, if you know a friend who you think might be interested in this podcast, we are available on all the big platforms. You can subscribe and follow on Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify. If you want to get a free month of Stitcher Premium and support the show as well, you can go to stitcher.com/premium and sign up with the promo code AWESOME. It's another way to support the show. I also want to give a shout out to my producer on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Mooney. Thank you so much for your support, Mary Beth. I sincerely appreciate it. And if you guys are curious, you can go to patreon.com/awesome disaster and check out what I've got going on over there. I've recorded an entire EP of original music while in quarantine, and you can get it months in advance by signing up today. So you can check that out, as well as I do some food writing and I make custom playlists. And I'm just glad that you guys are interacting with what I do, because it is stuff I am very passionate about. So it doesn't feel it's me making the best out of it. I'm glad there are people who are responding to what I do. That's it's very cathartic. So thank you guys for being here. Stay safe, wear a mask, and take care of those and look out for those around you. And I will see you guys next time between Awesome and Disaster. Stay safe, everybody.